Pixar's latest animated film, ELIO, was released in theaters a couple of weeks ago, and it had the lowest performing opening weekend in Pixar's history. And now the Hollywood Reporter has published a long piece about the production woes that plagued this movie behind the scenes for the last couple of years. First off, they had a director quit the project in the middle after an almost finished product was presented to the Pixar bosses. They didn't like it, so they had to switch. And then they had a talent leave the project after that.
America Ferrera.
And a bunch of anonymous sources from within Pixar have complained to the Hollywood Reporter about the lack of diversity in the movie. And this is back in 2023 that they started making these decisions, ostensibly before what is being colloquially referred to as the cultural vibe shift. They abandoned queer themes in the movie. So to put it simply, the protagonist, he is an 11-year-old, and they wanted this character to be implicitly, very strongly implied to be gay.
Through posters
Yes.
in his room and through a love interest that he would pine for.
Right. So, first off, there were themes of environmentalism. They said there was a film sequence removed from the final cut in which he collected trash on the beach and turned it into homemade apparel and included a pink tank top. Then the movie's team referred to it as a trash and show. But if you don't remember seeing this in the movie, it's because they decided that was a little too queer-coded. This was portraying a queer-coded character, basically reflecting the childhood of the director, Adrian Molina. He is an openly gay filmmaker, and his vision for the movie was not seen through at the end. It was a vanity project. And this director petulantly walked away from the project as soon as there was any pushback on these themes. Some sources say that Adrian Molina did not intend the film to be a coming-out story since the character is so young, but either way, the characterization faded away throughout production as ELIO became more masculine following feedback from leadership. Gone were not only such direct examples of his passion for environmentalism and fashion, but also a scene in his bedroom with pictures on the wall suggesting a male crush. Hints at the trash fashion remain in the released film, although without any explanation for the unusual attire. And now, on a budget that some say is above $200 million, they've made $20 million in the opening weekend.
I mean, it was originally like people were saying $300 million, then that was pared back to 150, but then insiders at Pixar said no, it had to be more than $200 million.
Now, this isn't a nobody director. He was responsible for Coco in 2017, which was massively successful. So I understand why he had the pedigree and he had the room to make a project that was a little bit more just for his own whims. But as soon as they expressed any preferences outside of his original vision, he decided to walk away. And now I think he's working on... wasn't it they put him on to Coco 2 instead?
Here's an idea. Remember the movie The Fabelmans? That was like the Steven Spielberg movie about Steven Spielberg. Yeah. Well, that made about $45 million at the box office on a budget of $40 million. But the key there is that the budget was $40 million, not $150 million. And Steven Spielberg is Steven Spielberg, who can make vanity projects at his whim because he is who he is.
And that was after the failed West Side Story.
Yes, but I still think that you have to have more of a pedigree than just a couple of good movies if you want to tell a story that close to your heart with somebody else's money.
Or make it with your own money. But
otherwise, if you're going to make a movie with a budget that large, it's going to become victim to corporate storytelling because they're going to try and maximize viewership by making it as boring and as generic as possible. That's just the way it's going to be. A movie like this that he pitched would work better as a short film, made himself.
Or not at all, because can we just stop making everything gay?
Well, I'm trying to find a way that they can be like, look, you can make your movie, but you can't ask for $150 million to make it, and you definitely can't ask for $200 million to make it unless you can tell them damn well that you're damn well sure that it's going to be able to make double or triple its budget back.
Back in 2023, they did an early test screening for ELIO in Arizona, and although viewers expressed how much they enjoyed the movie, they were also asked how many would go to see it in a theater, and not a single hand was raised. So then what followed shortly after was a screening for the Pixar leadership, and he had a tense conversation afterwards with Pixar boss Pete Docter. Rumors circulated that Adrian Molina was hurt by the conversation. Oh, poor you. And then exited the project soon after and was replaced by co-directors Madeline Sharafian and Domei Shi. The second one was responsible for Turning Red, which was also a massive failure. One former Pixar assistant editor said to The Hollywood Reporter, "I was deeply saddened and aggrieved that the changes were made. The exodus of talent after that cut was really indicative of how unhappy a lot of people were that they had changed and destroyed this beautiful work." Another anonymous source said it was pretty clear through the production of the first version of ELIO that studio leaders were sanding down the moments in the film that alluded to ELIO's sexuality of being queer. So
again, 11-year-old, doesn't need to be in the movie. At all.
This is a pattern now. So they already cut a transgender character's storyline from Pixar's TV series earlier this year called Win or Lose.
And Inside Out 2 went through many revisions, which got it to be the corporate box office success that it is. There's another movie from Pixar coming out next year called Hoppers, which supposedly had extensive themes of environmentalism that I'm sure people would have just loved to take their kids to. Remember, what was it, Migration?
It was about climate.
Yes.
Yeah, it was about environmentalism. We have a 20 from Pop Culture Junkie. When is Hollywood going to learn that they have to be careful when doling out blank check vanity projects? Joker sequel, anyone?
Yep.
Well, this was a couple of years back, and maybe they've learned their lesson.
Well, the thing is this was right after Lightyear failed. And, I still don't know if I believe that the gay character is the reason Lightyear failed as much as not having Tim Allen in the movie is the reason it failed. And the fact that
sort of scapegoated,
Buzz Lightyear looked like a cop who turned off the body camera with his freaking haircut and everything. So
the anonymous source went on to say, suddenly you remove this big piece, which is all about identity, and ELIO just becomes about totally nothing. Okay, it was about nothing when you decided to make it about the character being gay. It was already about nothing at that point. Then the ELIO that is in theaters right now is far worse than Adrian's best version of the original. The character was cute and so much fun and had so much personality. You mean he was zesty? And now he feels so much more generic. And then they say it's gotten positive reviews anyway. America Ferrera was originally on the cast to play Elio's mother in the movie, but she allegedly left the movie when Adrian Molina left because she was pissed that they no longer had a Latinx director.
They used the term. I don't know if she was not available for comment, so let's at least be fair. She didn't say that specifically, but the Hollywood Reporter decided
to believe it, though.
Buckle in and say Latinx representation.
Right. It's just been a total catastrophe. The ELIO production resulted in fraught feelings for those with ties to Pixar who have come to question whether the company intends to prioritize diversity. Pete Docter sparked debate when he noted in a 2024 interview that Pixar should make the most relatable films possible, perceived as advocating for a shift away from underrepresented characters and voices. That's a good thing.
It would be best for you to focus on making movies that can be enjoyed by everyone, or at least the largest demographic possible, which is not to say that it shouldn't necessarily... It's to say that your themes should be much more deftly handled. However you're going to do this. Look, one of the things that I think is kind of a cancer is like people don't realize like you can go back and rewatch any movie and some video essayist can point to 10 reasons why this movie is about this theme.
Right.
But the point is that they had to dive deep to find it.
Make them work for it.
I watched a House retrospective that says that the show was born out of the Bush administration's war on terror. from this leftist. And I don't agree with him, but it's a fascinating leap of logic that the guy makes. And he draws it into comparing it to 24 and the war on terror. And I'm like, okay, I think this is kind of insane, but this is kind of interesting. But do I believe that anybody that was making the show, do I think Annie Jacobson or David Shore were like, you know what? We need a medical version of 24. No, I don't. But it was well researched, and he points to examples as to how this could possibly link to that. But that's the job of the video essayist, not the person who's making the art.
Yeah, keep all of that in the realm of internet theories. You don't need to feed it to people. And I would say, if we're talking about children's entertainment, family-friendly entertainment, the only, what did you say, deft way to handle themes like queer identity or divorce or sexuality, any of those things in a kids movie, is to not handle it at all. That is the only good way to go about this. The only wise decision is to not address it. And it's only the adults.
People will still go back 10 years later and point to minute examples of a character and say, this is why. What did we see yesterday? Somebody said J.K. Rowling was a lesbian icon. I'm like, since when?
Yeah, people will just think whatever they want to think, but you don't need to feed into it. They say that Disney isn't necessarily responsible for the fact that Pixar is shifting away from queer themes in their movies. They're saying it's more happening from inside Pixar. There's a lot of obeying in advance behavior coming from the higher execs at Pixar, citing examples like Hopper's toning down themes of environmentalism. And then the director was told, you can't have divorce in this movie, which this anonymous source says is so wild. A different source says the project downplays the notion of this representing meddling and sees suggestions as typical of any early development process, noting that there is no mandate in Pixar prohibiting divorce in movies. But still, I think the implicit demand from the higher-ups is stop making it all about you, stop making it all about underrepresentation of voices and identities, and stop veering off from territory that's appropriate for children, because the backlash has just gotten too loud for them. Like they had to back down.
It's not
they
about
overplayed their hand so badly that they are at this point actually responding to a cultural vibe shift.
It's not about you.
As much as we mock that
term. It's not
term.
about your identity. It never will be. Not implicitly, not if you want the largest audience possible, because the idea of identity doesn't actually interest a whole ton of people. Not to the level that they pretend that it does. It is actually ostensibly the least interesting thing about you. Like, at least in my opinion, who you sleep with and who you vote for is probably the least interesting thing about you. And if it's not, that's actually a sign that you're probably not that interesting.
I mean, I feel like animation in general across all these studios has become something for adults. Have you noticed that? It's not just anime, but all animation, all animated shows and movies, it seems like they're catered for a very specific niche audience of mainly millennials.
Yeah. There's a sweet spot of them to make stuff that's for millennials who have kids that they will theoretically, like Minecraft.
But they're making it for childless millennials specifically. Like with the
I don't think
themes
so.
that they
No,
insert,
I think that
the
they do it-
sentimentalism, the focus on identity, the self-referential humor, the Steven Universe of it all. It's the BoJack Horseman of it all, and like the themes that they include, they wouldn't be picked up on by kids. Parents wouldn't care about it.
Lilo and Stitch was the live action, at least, was made for the millennials who liked Lilo and Stitch.
Sure.
Okay, let me rephrase. Yeah, the live action versions of these things that are getting made now are made for millennials with kids to bring their kids to, because they liked the original.
I do think animation as a medium as a whole has been completely usurped by activists, and some of them were the ones getting interviewed in this piece for The Hollywood Reporter. And this Pride Month, it was a flop. Altogether. You sent me this story about the Pride merch at Disney this month getting carted away after sales were abysmal. And they're scaling it all back and throwing it in discount bins. I mean, maybe nobody wants this shit. No one wants your rainbow shit.
Look, like even the majority of members of the LGBTQ, they say it's called rainbow capitalism, and a lot of them reject it anyways because they don't like the idea that a massive conglomerate that's probably exploiting workers in third world countries and benefiting capitalism, that their identity is being used for that. So it really depends on who you ask, but it's just not interesting anymore. Nobody really cares about identity.
It's kind of disingenuous, like when LGBT people like complain about the marketing and stuff, though, because they'll be like, oh, this is cringe, but they're not actually upset with the pandering. They're upset with like the delivery, and they'll always
pander better.
Yeah, they'll always vote and advocate for their voices to be amplified. So it's like, okay, well, you don't like the small microcosm that's going to be a result of that, which is tacky t-shirts, but like what you advocate for is still a part of the same movement, which is be as obnoxious and loud as possible.
We have another 20 from Pop Culture Junkie. Beginning to wonder if low June attendance at Walt Disney World here in Florida may be radiation from the blast zone of the controversy over some of their film content.
I mean,
I didn't know about having low attendance in June. That's wild.
Maybe people
during the summer.
Maybe people are just broke and it's raining every 2 days, and you can't get outside without dying of heat exhaustion.
Well, everyone's visiting Alligator Alcatraz. And
let's go.
It's all Ron DeSantis' fault at the end of the day.
I also think like with the Pixar, like you're saying, how they're kind of targeting adults, is because like Pixar also has huge name recognition from like 25 to 40, like people that means something to them. And like I remember vividly like knowing that Pixar movies were bangers when I was a kid. And I don't think kids today grow up with that. And so Pixar is also fumbling another generation where they used to have such prestige, and now they're just whatever.
They're not creating anything original that anyone cares about, and no childhoods are going to be impacted by Pixar original content in this day and age. And I just have to mention before we move on, there were implications that ELIO failed at the box office because of the fact that they abandoned queer themes. That is the dumbest take I've ever heard.
It would have failed either way.
It would have failed either way because Pixar original content is repeatedly not just underperforming, but just completely crashing and burning.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.